Hi everyone, I'm Rachel Sylvester. I'm a columnist at the Times, and I've spent the last year chairing our Times Education Commission. So that link between education and employment and skills is very close to my heart, something I've been looking at a lot. And our panelists we're all going to introduce ourselves. Jane, do you want to go first?
Yes, thank you, Rachel. I sit before you, my name's Jane Reddin, and I sit before you as a rare beast in our industry. I am a female general partner of a fund, and I'm a non-investment professional. So I'm really proud of our team for lots of reasons, but mostly because that's a massive signal after 25 years of working in our industry that talent and people and building teams and human capital as a lever of growth is as important as fiscal health.
Fascinating. There's so much to talk about there. Sarah, do you want to introduce yourself quickly?
Yes, hi there. My name is Sarah Moore. I'm a partner at PwC, slightly less rare, and congratulations.
But still very rare.
Yeah. There's cues for the lose now, which is nice. I lead our people and organisation business, and I'm also head of purpose for the firm.
Fantastic. So the theme of this session is so relevant post-pandemic. We've seen this exodus of people. Jane, what do you think needs to change in the way companies operate? How do people need to rethink the workplace?
Yeah, amazing. We've built a platform proposition at AlbionVC, and just in case anybody doesn't know us, we're a $1 billion VCT, an early stage fund, and we invest specifically in B2B software and health tech businesses. And the four pillars that we focus on as an advisory and strategic advisory proposition are as relevant before, actually, as they are going forward, even more critical. And they are clarity on strategic growth alignment. So what are we aiming for and why is that important? How are we sharing that? The purpose of an organization is as important, the why as well as the what. We're also really interested in helping our teams to build, so the team formation, specifically pegged to what we're actually trying to achieve as a business. And I think getting a direct correlated link there is even more important in hyper-scaling businesses. The third thing is leadership development. We know from our research that one of the most, and I'm sure you're going to say more about this, but one of the most important motivators for people joining companies is to understand what the company is going to do for them. What's the why for me, my why, and how am I going to develop as a manager and a leader during my tenure at this business or in this company? So we focus specifically on leadership development as a theme within all of our portfolio companies. And then the fourth is organizational scaling, organizational fitness to scale. And that's a factor of culture, codifying and embedding culture deliberately, and operating efficacy. Businesses need to operate in an asynchronous and remote environment in a way which is more deliberate and more focused on building the tools and environment for individuals to work from anywhere, whenever they want to, in an empowered way. So I would say those four things are the core pillars of our strategy, and that's what I think has been important and is even more important going forward.
Fascinating. Sarah, do you think that's right? Has the pandemic changed the way people see work and changed the way in which they work?
Undoubtedly. I mean, it's been an absolute paradigm shift in terms of people's expectations of how they will work and where they will work. Now, progressive organisations that have been looking at engaging and retaining their talented people, even pre-COVID, were looking at, well, what can I do to attract people into my organisation? I absolutely agree that purpose and trust at the core of an organisation is now something very much that prospective employees are looking for in terms of selecting which organisation to work for. But what one of the benefits of COVID has been that just this huge acceleration around remote, more empowered working, or hybrid working, as we might say now. And in the past, I've worked with a number of clients that have been very skeptical about being able to track or manage productivity of people that they can't physically see on the work floor. And that's just all been thrown up in the air, because we've proved we can be even more productive when we're working away from a physical office than we are in it.
So Jacob Rees-Mogg is wrong with his note saying all civil servants have to come into the office.
At least a part of the time.
There are benefits for being physically at work, and we've recently launched a hopes and fears survey at PwC. So globally, we've surveyed 50,000 workers in terms of their wants, desires, hopes and fears, and we have a UK cut of that, which has been incredibly helpful. So we've got over 2,000 responses from the UK. And yes, there is a majority of about 60% of responders that want to work in a hybrid way. So that's a blend of being at home or not in a physical office environment or location in which they might be paid to work. But only 30% want to do that 100% of the time and be outside of the office. So I think this blended way of working is absolutely the future. There's lots more I can say. I won't at the moment. I'll wait for questions. But I think key to it is around organisations really understanding where their business is going and how their workforce needs to show up to deliver it.
Yeah.
But how they can use technology and automation to be able to deliver that holistic service. And the tech is critical. We've all been there, haven't we? Not on mute, or the Wi-Fi's down, or the whole family's on the Wi-Fi. So there's lots of issues there that have to be right and the right environment for hybrid working to work.
I wondered to what extent both of you have come across sort of more reactionary forces. So, for example, PwC was criticised by Alan Sugar for allowing employees to go home early. I think it was on a Friday. Do you think there's a kind of reaction force? I was joking about Jacob Rees-Mogg, but actually there's a bit of a culture war going on about this, isn't there?
I agree. That all publicity is good publicity, as they say. And this is the second year that we have brought in summer hours working. And there are a number of other organisations that do that. We're not unique in offering it. It's a form of compressed hours. So we're still asking our people to work their full amount of time, but not in a presenteeism way. It's about the outputs rather than the amount of hours that you do. Yeah. And overwhelmingly, our people said they wanted it to come back this year, so we've extended that. People will always have a different view. In the same way, I really get a buzz out of being, my main office is in London. I have the opportunity of moving around the UK, which is fantastic. I love being around people. I like going out for dinner. It's a really lovely day. So there's something for me about the buzz I get when I'm at work, but the connections that I make with people. We've surveyed our people at PwC in terms of their preferences, and there are segmentations within that. And the outputs of that are around our, younger employee group of about 18 to 25. There's a mix for them. Sometimes it's harder with their setup at home to be able to work around a shared table, or, everyone's kind of fighting for space. So it's good to be back. We've got subsidised food in the office, so that's another draw. But that middle band of people, perhaps with family responsibilities, they've really got a dividend of being able to work from home and balance and juggle other responsibilities that they have. Now, what we've done, which I think is really important, is listen to what our different groups want, but we've been really clear around what the expectation is. So at PwC, we've said 2 to 3 days to be spent at home, or we're outside, working remotely, as you prefer, but 2 to 3 days in the office or on client site. So a really clear expectation around it is hybrid and it is a blend. And we're also quite clear, that you can be a good task master, a processor, working from home. You can get through your admin, and that's brilliant, and you feel great at the end of it. But are you a good leader? And are you able to impart your knowledge and skills to some of our new joiners, some of whom hadn't actually set foot in the building for a year before they were able to come and work with us? And we're really clear, good leaders need to physically work side by side with their colleagues to be able to get to know each other and work productively. So it's absolutely a hybrid.
That's interesting. Jane, do you think that's right? Do you think in a leadership position it's more important to be in the office?
One of my favourite moments ever was a fireside chat that I did with employee number 10 at GitHub. And GitHub before the pandemic was resoundingly the biggest global company that was remote first. And I asked the same question. I said, so, because one of the things we were thinking about is how do you build strategy? How do you set strategy as a leadership team? Not just like work together, but actually how do you have those very complicated iterative conversations when you're building your strategy? How do you do that remotely? And he said, oh, it's one of our best kept secrets. We don't. I was like, oh my God, what do you mean you don't? No, we don't do it on the screen. I was like, okay, so talk me through this. How do you do it? And he said, they have a budget, it's a global budget, and it's a budget line globally for every single team, and including leadership teams, to travel wherever they are in the world once a quarter, and they spend up to 2 weeks together setting strategy in person.
All in one go?
All in one go.
How interesting.
And then it's a long tail, so you have this hit, like this sort of pep week, and then you have a long tail where the team's got lots of human connectivity, they've set strategy, they've had those healthy conflict conversations, they've been in a room together to hash things out, to make decisions, and then they've got this long tail where it's sort of there's a fade, and they're able to sustain the remote working, and then they have another kind of moment of pep. He did also say that loneliness was a real issue, so I'd love to bring that up. But I think to answer your question in terms of leadership and strategy, for what it's worth, and I'm sure he knows very, very well indeed, and I've seen this play out in all of our leadership teams, in all of the founders that we're working with, we are encouraging them. They are really enjoying having times, compressed times when they are together connecting with their teams, and then they fly off to their various places in the world and then come back together. What the cadence is for that is TBC. We're playing with, should that be quarterly, should that be half yearly, should that be yearly, and of course, budget dependent, team size dependent, business dependent. I would say kind of through your own lane on that one, but definitely don't try and do everything remotely forever.
Interesting. You mentioned loneliness. To what extent do you think the balance has shifted between the employee and the employer, if you like? And is the sort of individual needs now more important in this very different job market that we're getting now? Do you think that the power now is almost with the employee rather than the employer?
Well, that's a very interesting question, because I'm getting asked on repeat, are we going into a recession? Is there going to be talent liquidity in the market? Where we've experienced 18 months of salary inflation, scarce talent become even more scarce. I've been doing this for 25 years, so the gazumping that was going on in 2000 and 2001 all came back ferociously, and people would accept roles and 5 roles and then decide on the day which one they were going to turn up to, and all sorts of very destabilizing behaviors when building teams. So I would argue that there's potentially a little bit of a redress of the balance back towards the employer, in fact.
Interesting.
What I totally believe, though, is that this is an alliance. It's as important for the company to think about what they're doing for the individuals in the their team, as to what the individual's going to do for the company. There's the brilliant book that Reid Hoffman and Bezos, it's a bit old now, but still my go-to as the tour of duty idea. I think it's a fantastic concept, and there's 2 other modes that I perhaps could pull up as sort of coaching tips as well. So I hold the mic and then I'll pass it to you. There's 2 distinct modes, I believe, in the leadership team. One is the leader mode and the other is manager mode. When I'm coaching founders, I express the need to context shift, to be adaptable to what you're trying to get out of the next interaction or forum that you're going into. Leadership is very much about setting clarity on direction. We're on a boat and we're heading, and it's New York over there. Might not be New York, might be Sydney, but we're on a boat and we're going in that direction. So let's set sail, and this is the direction that we're going in. Manager mode is, okay, so the team's on the boat. How is that person feeling today? What is it for them? Like, were they sick last night? Do they feel good today? How, what's their experience of the next 6 hours, not the final destination? And those 2 modes have to be borne out, I think, in parallel. You've got to context shift between them in order to successfully navigate this next phase.
Interesting. Sarah, what's your perspective on this idea of the balance between employer and employee, and whether actually the kind of emotional needs of the employee are now as important as the financial needs of the employer?
Yeah, sorry, I've just got a little frog in my throat, so just bear with me. Thank you.
Some water?
I will in a moment.
Yeah.
Thank you, I'm fine. It was more wanting to cough on a microphone while you were talking. Look, it's absolutely as important. And resilience, wellness, it was absolutely top of the agenda for many organisations during the pandemic, because everybody's people and workers needed help and support, and it was uncharted territories for everybody. I don't believe there is a shift in power base between employees and employers, because I think there are different sectors where there is a balance. There's lots of jobs out there in certain sectors and not enough people, but then conversely there is a war for talent in others. And my mantra is absolutely, it's about understanding what works for both of you. And I think if you can have a curated conversation with an employee around what do they want to get out of the next 5 years at work, in the short, the medium, and a little bit longer term, and how can that be delivered within the organisation. And then I think if you take it to this point around kind of the wellness and the health, I think if people are secure in their role to the extent that you can be in this changing world, they've had career conversations where they understand where they might be able to progress to, and they've got the help and the support in place. That's absolutely vital. I talk a lot about being noticed. I think being noticed is something that keeps employees in an organisation. Because if you know that you're going somewhere, even if that somewhere is you're going to stay in the role that you do because you're really good at it and you love it and people value and appreciate it, you've had that conversation. But the main thing, to come back to that wellness point, is mental health is openly discussed. And when I think about where I was 25 years ago when I joined PwC, and I never intended to join or B intended to stay. And some of the reasons that I did are around a huge variety of experiences in my career. I joined as an administrator in HR, so I shouldn't be sitting here as a partner. It's Social Mobility Day tomorrow, and I'm a bit of a poster girl for the firm for that, because it's a really great example of how you can move around within that. But at various times in my life, when my dad died, my husband is fine now, but he had testicular cancer, the firm were there for me in terms of go away, take leave, take paid leave, get yourself and your family well and come back. And we laughed about it, as you can, in that black humour that you have in these moments around, you're no good to us if your head is over there, so be over there, come back when you're ready. And what that gives me as a loyalty to the organisation, it really, really anchors you.
Which you can't buy with a higher salary. It's invaluable, isn't it?
You really can't. And the fact that now we have very open conversations with our people about what they need in terms of our benefits. So we talk about the employee value proposition, or the deal, for want of a better word, for our people. Part of that is around the well-being, the health support that we can give them. Many organisations have employee assistance programs and helplines and access to counselling. We openly discuss that and offer that to our people, and many of my clients do the same thing. So I think being able to be open about, I feel a bit disconnected today, or I feel a bit lost. I talked about my own feelings of loneliness during the pandemic. I'm very extrovert, and I was sort of trapped in the top room, just talking into a screen, feeling lucky I had a top room to talk into that was my own. So it's absolutely vital. And again, our data is telling us that that's what prospective employees are expecting of their employers.
And Jane, how permanent do you think this shift is? Is the Great Rethink a permanent rethink?
Yeah,
or
that's a great question.
Is it just a sort of short-term response to the pandemic or the economic situation?
I don't think we're going back. I hope we don't. I really hope we don't. Empowerment, we talked about empowerment, didn't we, as being so vital, and the next generation of leaders, future leaders that are starting work today. My daughter's 15, and I can see her with a different mindset. I can see her look at work differently. Her narrative around how she's going to path through her career doesn't look like in the way that it did 10 years ago or 20 years ago when we started working. It just doesn't. The gig economy. I think she might not have a job, have an actual job. She might have 6 jobs. We mustn't. If we do go back, I think we've got something really wrong. For me, empowerment's important. One of the things that I'm most proud of in my work my research work over the last 5 years is digging into trust, the importance of trust, the importance of building a high trust environment. We call it the high TQ team, trust quotient, the high TQ leader. And I've found a way to measure trust. Because it's really hard to measure. It's expressed as a feeling, actually, or it's felt as a feeling. And to the question, can you cultivate trust? Can you build trust? Absolutely, yes, you can. And so I'm very proud that we work. We offer that as a diagnostic tool for all of our portfolio companies that help get a measure on trust and help them work on the areas where they may have blind spots.
How do you do that? Is that a survey or?
Yeah. So I've built a tool. It's got 35 indicators in it, split into 6 buckets or 6 clusters that you can see if you look at my blogs, and we'll publish it as well to make it accessible for everybody. And teams can use it in different ways. We've used it internally as a way of getting a measure from A to D on those 35 indicators. And then we've run a workshop to build our own teamship rules. And that helps to build psychological safety. It helps to build psychological contracting with everyone in the team. It helps to create clarity on what our expectations of each other. And genuinely, we bring that alive in all of the conversations that we have. And it really works. And our portfolio companies are finding the same. So I'm really proud.
Fascinating. Sarah, do you think that's right, that trust is very important, both for employees, but also for the customer or consumer?
100%, without a shadow of a doubt. So again, our survey tells us that trust and purpose are core reasons why people select an organisation. And, we've talked about greenwashing, in the press. Purpose washing is another new word that's out there. So organisations having a very highfalutin and grand statement about what they do. And I think we've all read in the press, some of the backlash, then what they actually do doesn't correlate. So I think organisations that have got high trust, and that's fantastic to hear, are the ones that have a better chance of attracting employees into that organisation. And for us, our firm-wide purpose is around solving important problems and building trust in society. Our employees expect that of us. The work that we do, the consulting work that we do for our clients, is to create sustained outcomes that are value-driven but absolutely rooted in trust. And I just think there's no going back, I hope, to a life before hybrid working, and there is absolutely no going back to not having trust, ESG purpose at the heart for organisations and for employees.
It totally links to performance too. Yeah. It's not, it's about how we build a high-performing team and a high-performing organisation, as a company of the future. How are you? I'm curious to ask, if it's possible, to ask a question. How are you measuring the correlated links between well-being and performance?
So we measure our performance through a number of different metrics, and we look at value that we provide to our clients. We have a lot of client satisfaction survey that's in there, and we have lots of quantifiable KPIs that sit in there, as well as our kind of regulatory requirements. From a wellness perspective, we have a number of data points around our engagement survey about how people are feeling and what they tell us. We have specific surveys that relate to that, and obviously we have things around sickness absence and what the driver of that absence is. Yes. And then we have some incredibly amazing techie people in our organisation that really bring it together and look at the correlation between the two.
Yeah, so interesting. I'm going to open up to questions in a minute, but first of all, Sarah, I was really struck. PwC did some fascinating business surveys for the Times Education Commission, which found huge skill shortages. 85% of companies in the survey said they were either had or were expecting skill shortages, and 75% of the companies said that they'd had to give new recruits training in basic skills, even literacy and numeracy.
Yeah.
Wow.
How much do you think, what explains that skill shortage and what needs to be done if you think about the next stage of the great rethink, if you like? Is it about education? And is that about also then improving social mobility?
Yeah, there's lots in there. I mean, you've covered a number of areas in there, Rachel. So I think the experience that students get at school is absolutely paramount, both academically but also practically. I'm so encouraged by the movement around apprenticeship schemes and organisations that have hire apprentices. And again, we've got data that suggests that there's a real loyalty from school leavers that come into organisations as an apprentice with a longer tenure tend to do very well. They strive, they're appreciative of the opportunity. So there's a lot of data in there. And also other organisations, including ours, have changed the kind of gate stages and the entry qualifications that are required. So we changed our expectations around A-levels, for example, to make it for us to be able to really broaden applicants that could come in. So there is a greater social mobility of the applicants that are joining certain organisations. You just can't get that diversity in your workforce if you're not introducing it at its earliest possible stage. But there's lots in there, and employers as well, in terms of the training that they're providing to new joiners coming in, but also students that are still at school and offering, training pro bono. A lot of our employees want to give back, and we see that in our clients too. So actually delivering training services to students while they're there, and then lots of different internship and apprenticeship schemes as they enter the world of work.
So interesting. Jane, what's your view on the skill shortages and what needs to happen? Because particularly in the tech industry, it's a huge problem,
massive,
isn't it?
Yeah. Again, somewhat controversially, I'm going to give you my honest view. Look, we're here. I'm so proud that we're here as three women, talking on stage in a space that I'm used to being the only man in the room and. The only woman in the room. Freudian. Freudian split there. I think it's. We have to broaden out. We have to recognise that if you are a man, a white man at that, you are from the beginning of your career going to have had more privileged advantages and more opportunities to progress than your counterpart who's a female, even before you start looking at ethnicity and socioeconomic background. The only way that we can begin to change the mindset and genuinely open up the talent pool is if we downgrade track record. And that's kind of what you're saying, I think. Every single a tool that I've built, and every single one of our portfolio companies uses a hiring playbook to make a hire. It's a scorecard system. Again, you can find it on, I'll share it with the world. If anybody wants it, you can have everything that I've ever done on this because I feel so strongly about it. The scorecard that measures candidates on a number of different dimensions, not just what they've done before, is critical to opening up the talent pool.
And not just academic
and
results.
Not just academic background. So if you imagine 4 columns, a bit like 4 stripes of a beach ball, if you look up close to the red stripe on a beach ball, it just looks like a red ball. And then if you pull it away, it's not actually, it's multicolored. So if you think about those different colored stripes, your red stripe could be experience and education. The yellow stripe is role strength. So what are they great at? Like, how do they do their work? What's their attention to detail or other competencies that are required to do the role well? The third is values fit, cultural fit. The fourth is growth mindset. The fifth can be personal motivations, and the sixth can be some specific. I definitely advocate for positive discrimination in order to bring a ping back so that we do get cognitive diversity or any diversity into teams. But if you then take those 4 or 5 or 6 columns and you remove the need for the track record, you have still a way of measuring and assessing candidates robustly, but you've removed the need, the bias that will come from education or socioeconomic privilege. And that, for me, is a way of getting certainty that the hire will perform in the role at the same time as widening the talent pool.
So fascinating. Do you think, Sarah, that women perhaps are more open to these new ideas, and that perhaps that's been a benefit of the pandemic, that some of this everything thrown up in the air?
That's a really interesting question. I think I wouldn't like to say that women over men are more open to it. I think it's about people with you talk about a growth mindset, and I absolutely concur with that. I think it's people that are willing to be open and embrace change, and that there is a different way of doing things, and that even if it's a repeatable activity or task, that how can you do it better than you did it before? And again, who can bring a different perspective to that other than your own, particularly if you've been doing it for a while. So I would say it's more that, it's people being open to a different and fresh perspective. Now, I think the pandemic has definitely pushed us more into that space, because there's been so much that's been unknown and uncertain, and we've managed it, actually, and we've come out the other side. Yeah. And I think there's a lot of, we're talking about the rethink. How many of us in this room sat through lockdown and thought about, I'm going to do something different when I go back, or maybe I won't get on that hamster wheel, or maybe I'll make different decisions and choices. And I think it's that. I think if we can harness some of that, that's the fantastic driver that will get us momentum in the next phase of our lives.
Brilliant. Are there any questions for the panel? If you just raise your hands if you've got a question. If not, I can keep asking the questions.
Don't leave us hanging.
The lady there. Do we need a microphone? Thank you. Do you just introduce yourself as well, Sue?
Sure. Ulrika Weising, SVP Energy Transition at Valorec. First of all, it's great to see 3 women on stage. It's a refreshing situation, I must say. So thank you for a really interesting discussion. My question is, I'm going to give an example, and I just read about this, and it was a Swedish company who decided to give vacation days based on the time their employees spend exercising. What? So you can get up to a week extra vacation by spending at least 3 hours a week exercising. And they've done this now for a couple of years, I think, and they've actually seen that the long-term sick leave, has dramatically been reduced. The regular sick leave has dramatically been reduced. And I just thought that was such an interesting example. How are you looking at kind of the physical health, and how you bring that into your employee benefits, and how you can encourage people to stay physically fit, because actually it brings value to the company?
So fascinating. Jane, do you want to go first?
Oh, I was going to pass it to you.
I love that. That is absolutely fantastic. So I think it's absolutely imperative that progressive organisations, all organisations, have that focus on physical and mental well-being, as we've been talking about before. And again, many of us during the pandemic were encouraged to do walking meetings and get outside, because the data was telling everyone that we're so sedentary in this new environment that we're all
25 steps,
pounds on, and moving about. But building it into policy, I think, is very important. So again, I've got clients of mine that in their benefit programs, that they're taking advantage of the cycle to work scheme and the efficiencies around that. They're building in time for physical exercise, activities outside of the office, and discounts in gyms. Lots of things that can be done there. It's interesting about the earning point for holiday. So again, there's other organisations that are shifting to actually there's no holiday balance. You can just take it. And again, the research around that seems to suggest that organisations that are offering that find that people don't abuse the system and take up less holiday as a result. Now, there's 2 schools of thought. One that is brilliant, that you're empowering people, and largely there's trust again, and people will make a trusted decision. They won't let their team down. And we're getting better at measuring input and output. There are other organisations that are doing that perhaps there isn't that culture of trust, and it's more fear, and I can't be seen to taking annual leave. So I've slightly flipped it into leave, but I think it's really important. My personal view is I love that as an offer, and to get physical exercise on the table. I think physical exercise should be there anyway. You shouldn't have to earn it. It should be a given, and perhaps an expectation that you do it. I am very interested in how organisations manage annual leave, and I prefer to live in the world of it's trusted and you take what you feel you need at any given moment in time. But you just have to be careful that people don't feel that they can't do that.
Jane, what do you think about that? Because I think, isn't there a danger that people take less holiday if they feel they're going to be monitored rather than more?
You know, and startup life's not for everyone, right? It's hardcore. It's relentless 24/7, and you've got to really want to do it. I think it comes from understanding your own drivers and your own needs. The judgment of not doing it though, to your point, it's like, what happens if you don't want to? Like that you've been told that you've got to, so you get something else. For me, it feels a bit counterintuitive. You know that if you if you medicalize everything and you take one tablet that makes you feel sick, so then you take another tablet to stop you feeling sick, and then that makes you bunged up, so then you have to take another tablet, and before you know it, you've got 15 of these things that you've got to take on a daily basis. And I only use that example as an analogy, really, to say, well, what happens if we were to take away all the rules and just empower people to take accountability for their own being, express educationally that it's really important that you move, that you do stay fit and well, and then allow people to be empowered. It's I don't know, I'm a bit anti-policy. And
so interesting. I spoke to Sal Khan, who runs the Khan Academy, which is a huge online school with 135 million users around the world. But he said he thinks the education system, and it's different to the employment structures, obviously, but that teenagers are really infantilized. They're made to sit in rows, become sort of passive recipients of information, whereas in their lives they're used to being very active over their own lives. They're creating their Spotify lists, they're running their own businesses, they're running climate change marches and campaigns. And then he thinks that's actually maybe one explanation for the mental health crisis in schools, that there is this kind of people feeling very disempowered. And I think there is something about giving people agency that actually makes them more productive. Yeah,
it's a brilliant word. I love that word. That's amazing.
Really interesting.
I'd love to ask you, because you've just published huge congratulations, an amazing piece of work. What have you found? What are the reflections on the educational needs to empower the next generation of workers? For whatever environment they're going to go in. What have you found, and what do you recommend as a result of the work you've done?
Well, what was so striking to me, so we spoke to educators and school leaders and head teachers, but also businesses, including PwC and artists, an actor, an explorer, theatre directors. We tried to work out what the country needs rather than what education wants to kind of give the country, or what the politicians think we need. And what just came across so strongly is that the system is training children up to be robots, whereas actually the robots are going to take over the routine tasks. The workplace is being transformed, before our very eyes. So we need to inculcate the more human skills in young people and prepare them for the kind of modern workplace, which is changing. We don't even know what jobs kids who are starting school now are going to be doing. But we also know they're going to have to retrain many times. So the kind of love of learning is so important. So we've come up with recommendations for, changes to the assessment system and curriculum. But I think it's so connected. There's this kind of disconnect between education and employment, which so many people articulated to us, and that's crucial. We've got to sort of reconnect what the workplace now is with the education system.
There's another, again, geeking out on the diagnostic tools, but that's where I've gone deep, because I do believe that as in a fund, what we can do is provide a measure on the things that are hard to measure, and we can get scale by finding experts who can then embed those recommendations. About half of my time is spent pre-deal, when we look at a founder and we look at a founder team and assess their potential. And I've built an in-house model, which this time has 43 indicators on it, but there are 6 core investable traits. And that's where we look at, okay, so what is the potential that we've got here? A founder needs to show up with some magnitude of those investable traits in order to be qualified for the role, if you like. The two that that are there, and I believe, my thesis is that this is the founder of the future as opposed to the founder of the past, are EQ and learning mindset.
Fascinating.
Yeah, alongside
not
four others.
knowledge and academic expertise.
No,
it's emotional.
exceptionalism is one, but that's about have they achieved whatever it is, but have they achieved that to an exceptional level, and have they got the IQ to stay ahead? But the combination, which is rare, of IQ and EQ in tomorrow's leader is one that I'm personally dedicated and motivated to try and develop.
And do you think that's changed, both of you, that there is a shift to that EQ now matters more than it used to in the past?
It's a hugely correlated factor of trust and TQ.
What's TQ?
Trust quotient.
Okay.
So like think IQ, EQ, TQ. So if people are talking about, what is your TQ, how are you showing up as a leader with emotional intelligence to be able to understand others' perspectives, to be able to see that there's more than one way to skin the cat, that we are not robots, we are humans, and we're bringing our whole selves to work. Yeah,
Sarah, what's your take on that?
Yeah, I completely agree. It's those skills. We can get the data. You made the point about the robots are the ones that are doing the, repeatable, repetitive work. It's about what do you do with that insight, and then how can you turn that into something that's valuable. So in terms of the M&A work that we're involved with, we've done, hundreds and thousands of pre-deal diligence reports. They can be kind of cranked out using technology, but it's the insight that you have from working on those hundreds of deals or transactions, and often, usually, it's the human decisions that are made that make or break that deal, and understanding why that person is wired in that way, or what their potential reaction might be, or bringing that insight to our clients to help them make it a successful, value creative deal. They're the important things, and it's decision-making skills, it's emotional intelligence, it's all of those things, not necessarily the kind of academic inputs that go into that at the outset.
So fascinating.
Yeah, and I look at my daughter, and I think, God, she's learning EQ in a way that she's got language around it that I didn't even have a clue when I was her age.
So do you think companies and employers need to adjust to kind of encourage those skills and teach and inculcate those skills?
Oh yeah, but it's already happening. It's already happening in our teams.
So how do you do it? How do you train people to have EQ?
EQ. Well, there are various frames that you can put around it, but as a factor of role modeling, I think that's important. So I'm a huge fan of Brené Brown and her work of vulnerable leadership. It starts with the leader really being able to put themselves as vulnerable, to role model when they've messed up. Again, building trust. So the trust index has 6 buckets in it, really. The first is authenticity, and that's vulnerability and creating psychological safety. The second is healthy conflict. Are we able to encourage depersonalized debate that challenges each other, that disagrees with you effectively, but that I'm not personal to? It's not. I'm not personalizing. I'm not, sort of slating you. It's all about the betterment of the outcome. The next is accountability and get stuff done. So are we taking personal accountability for the deliverables that we're owning, and are we achieving the results? The fifth is bounce, resilience. Are we creating environments where we're resilient, where we're adaptive to the changes? And that's the most important part of any hyperscaling business, because there's one thing for sure, is that it's going to change a lot. And then the sixth is united purpose. Are we binding behind an overarching mission which is bigger than the interest of myself? It's okay for me to have my own personal drivers and motivators, but is what we're trying to achieve as a collective more important? And that framework will give you an environment to have conversation, to be able to set goals, to be able to deliver on the mission in a high trust, high EQ environment.
Fascinating. Sarah, what about you? Do you think, because PwC is obviously a very different organisation, to Jaden's organisations.
Yeah.
What does it still work in a big organisation like that, and is it still important?
Absolutely. I think all of those dimensions that Jane's talked through are skills and behaviours that we expect to see in our people and work closely with them to help them make decisions that are supportive of that. So completely agree, that's what's necessary. And just bring it back to the children, actually. I have a 10-year-old too, and when she talks about navigating her friendships, those skills that you've just talked through, they're the thing. You know, that piece around conflict, it's so important. How can you come together in a common purpose? How can you have the confidence to say, this is not my skill set, but I'm going to work with you? And in a larger organisation that's quite historically hierarchical in partnerships, you know, as a partner, as a leader, to say, and technology is a really great leveler of this, because several years ago we saw a lot of shifts in our clients, in ourselves, around grappling with technology, and I could see the fear in my colleagues' eyes of, you know, but I've got to do that. And what's wonderful about the way that we use insight technology now with our clients is it is our most, I hate this word, junior, but it is our kind of entry level people that are working the technology.
And teaching us.
So the client no longer, in a way, needs to speak to the partner because they want to have the conversation with the person that is generating the insight. And what happens if I do this? And what does that tell me? Now, I love that. I get very excited when I kind of see this sort of thing happening.
So all the hierarchies are breaking down.
We do exactly. We describe organisational design, again, that's one area is constellation, so constellation thinking. Simon Sinek talks about it a lot. It's brilliant. It's, you know, thinking about it as a network with gravitational forces as opposed to a pyramid. Like if I see any pyramid, but if anybody's got a pyramid-based org chart, throw it out. Do it differently.
So fascinating. I think that's a great note to end on. Sadly, we're out of time. We could carry on for another hour, but thank you very much to both of you, and thank you to all of you for listening.
Thank you. I love that. Thank you.